Alright, so today I'm going to go over how to name angles, which hopefully you're already mostly familiar with, and also some angle addition examples, okay? So, I drew an angle here. Hopefully, if you looked up the vocab on that first page, you know that an angle is made up of two rays that have the same endpoint, right? So ray MO, ray MG, they're both meeting at M. They form an angle. M is the vertex. Okay, now if I want to name this angle, and I don't mean like, oh, it's an acute angle or, something like that. I mean like actually name it like I was going to put in a problem or something or refer to this angle. The order of the letters matter. So typically, if I'm teaching a class, I'll stop and say, okay, so who thinks like they could name this angle? Typically, I do get the two or possibly three that are the most well-known. Well, actually, let me take that back. I don't remember what answers I normally get, but three different ways I could name this angle. I could just name it angle M. Okay, pretty basic. Now, to use one letter, I can only use the vertex. I could not name it angle O. I could not name it angle G. Okay, angle M. Now, if I'm using all three letters, this is where the order of the letters matter. And I do get kids saying angle MOG, angle GOM. No, okay? What you have to know is that the vertex has to go in the middle. So I can name this angle OMG, or I can name it angle GMO, okay? Those are my options. That's the only order of letters that would work for this angle, okay? Now, just another note for notation, if there's a lowercase m in front of an angle, that's referring to the measure of angle GMO, okay? Geometers, mathematicians, we're all about notation because do we like to write a lot? No, we do not. So this just saves me from having to write out the measure of angle GMO is, right? I don't even have to say, I just put one letter there. How convenient is that? Another note here. So let's just say I add a ray. Okay, it almost looks like I'm cutting that angle in half. Let's just say this is, I don't know, W. Okay. Now, I no longer could refer to any of these angles as angle M because I don't just have one angle there. I actually have three angles there. So I have the angle OMW, this guy right here. I have angle WMG, this guy right there. And I still have my original angle OMG. Okay? So three angles. If you have more than one angle in a diagram, you cannot just use one letter to refer to that angle because I'll be like, I don't know which angle you're talking about. Okay? You're going to have to be a little bit more specific. I don't know why I just said it like that, but just so hopefully you remember. So along the same lines, a segment addition, when you have like two smaller, that's not the way I wanted to start that sentence. When you have like one point in the middle of two other points in a straight line, you know that the two smaller distances add up to the larger distance. Well, this is the same idea. If I have an array kind of intersecting an angle, right? The two smaller angles, those two measurements are going to add up to the bigger angle. Okay, it's a little bit harder to picture, I think, with angles because it's not just like a straight line. But if this was like a Google or like presentation or something, I could maybe make it animated and just show you like, oh, the color, like I could fill this in and then fill this in, like, but here we are, pen and paper, old school. So the measure from here to here, the measure from here to here, let's say this is 45 degrees and this is 35 degrees, add them together, boom, you're going to get your 80-degree angle from OMG. I just made up those numbers, right? I don't know what they actually are. But there we go. So that's a little bit of introduction, if you will. And now we're going to do some examples, okay? So as is usually my custom, I'm going to start with two easier examples, and then we're going to make it a little bit harder, okay? Because who doesn't like a challenge? I know I do. So if you'd like to pause jot down these examples. I don't feel bad about asking you to draw them because, again, we're just working with straight lines. Okay? Here we go. First example. Find the measure of angle RST if the measure of angle RSI is 77 degrees and the measure of angle IST is 50 degrees. Okay? Now, this just looks more confusing because, like, when we were working with segments, we could just put the numbers in there. You knew right away if you were adding or subtracting. It was very simple and straightforward. But now we've got all these letters, and you're like, what is going on? But there's a couple, well, not different ways of doing this, but depending if you're more visual, you like to see things, there's a way you could do it. If you're more just like a direct approach, I'll kind of show you how to do that as well. So I'm going to do the more visual route. So RSI, first I want to find that angle. So again, S has to be in the middle, or you can just, RSI. We're talking about this angle here. So they're saying that's 77 degrees. So you can just fill that in if you like. I feel a sneeze coming on. All right, and we're back. And measure of angle IST. Trace those letters, IST. You could even highlight them if that would help you, right? That's 50 degrees. Boom, boom. So now once you have that filled in, you can see you have the two smaller angles and you're solving for the larger angle, RST, so you're just going to add them together. 77 plus 50 is 127, so measure of angle RST equals 127, okay? Now, you don't have to fill it in. From the very beginning, if you just look at what angle you're solving for and where it falls in the diagram, you can know if you're adding or subtracting. Like RST, those are the three letters are on the outside, if you will, on the outside of the diagram, so that means it's the biggest angle, and that means we'd have to be adding the two smaller numbers together. Okay, well, I'll talk about this in the second example. Do I need a scourge? We'll scourge. Okay. So now for this one, I'm just going to go more to the direct approach instead of filling it in. I'll start with that. So I'm looking for measure of angle FIH. Okay, so if I go to my diagram, FIH is this angle here. Okay, now you can see this is one of the smaller angles, so I don't even need to fill in my angle measurements. I know I'm going to subtract. So I would take 180 minus 70. I'm going to get the measure of angle FIH equals 110 degrees, okay? If the three letters that you're looking for, the angle that you're looking for is on the outside, these three letters on the outside, that's the biggest angle you're going to add. If they're not, then you're going to subtract, okay? So that's typically how I explain it, so hopefully that makes sense. Now the next two examples that I do are just going to get harder, and all that means is we're just throwing some X's at you, okay? Same concept, but now we are going to have to set up an equation, okay? So here we go. I've given you the measurements of three different angles, and you'll see only one of them has the actual degree here. The other two have X's in. This doesn't make it something different. Like when we set up our equation, we can just add that 150 to the other numbers that don't have an X with it. So don't think that it's its own separate thing and you can't combine it. But here, pretty basic explanation here, or way to set it up. This is what I always teach, or how I teach my kids to do these problems. So when I come to a problem like this, I'm not going to be thinking about, how do I say this? It's not like up here, do I just add or subtract? I'm just going to find my biggest angle. So to do that, I'm just looking for the three letters that are on the outside. So WVU. I'm going to find that measurement. Boom, right here. So that tells me -1 plus 171x is going to go on one side of the equation by itself, okay? Because that's the biggest angle that I have. So I have to add the other two expressions together to equal that. So let me fill it in. 21x minus 1 plus 150 equals -1 plus 171x, okay? Again, all I did, find the three letters that are on the outside. I have outside in quotations. Find your biggest angle that has to go by itself on one side of the equation, and you're adding the two smaller angles together to equal that. Right? As soon as you do that, you just have a basic algebra problem set up in front of you. You just solve for x. So if you work it out, you should get x equals 1. And that's it. Now, I could just plug this in here. I could plug 1 in for x. That would be 21 minus 1 would be 20 plus 150. That's going to equal 170, right? So you can always check if you're like, did I set that up right? Always plug your answer in to check. But there we go, right? So don't get too overwhelmed by like all these letters. Just find your biggest angle, and that goes by itself on one side of the equation. So again, for number 4, my 3 letters on the outside are KJI or IJK, right? That order could be reversed. So that's my 45x minus 2. I'm just going to fill that in over here by itself, and then I'm going to add 18x plus 4 plus 75 equals 45x minus 2. That's it. Okay? There's my equation. Work out the algebra magic. You should get x equals 3. Okay? So again, it has nothing to do with, like, I get some kids that think, oh, just find the angle with the degree measurement, and that goes by itself, and you add the x's together. No, that doesn't even make logical sense, right? We're talking about the 2 smaller angles. The measurements of the 2 smaller angles have to add up to the bigger angle, right? So identify your biggest angle, isolate that expression on one side of the equation, fill in the other 2, and then solve for x. Now, I could take this one step further. Let's say I also wanted you to find the measure of angle IJK, right? You couldn't just say, oh, well, that's just 45x minus 2. Well, it is, but once you solve for x, you could just plug that in and then find the measure of that angle. So that would be 133 degrees, right? So there's always that possibility that you would have one extra step. But that's it. Again, I hope that makes sense. Thanks for watching.